The hero of our story is the world's strongest hitman. During his last mission, his friend, who died during the operation, asked him to protect and care for his only daughter. When he went to meet her, something unexpected happened as he discovered the unique ability this girl possessed. What is this ability, and what will our hero do? This is what we will uncover in today's story. The story began on a beautiful sunny day. As our protagonist stood gazing at the sky, watching eagles soar while shielding his eyes from the bright sunlight, he felt a deep sense of boredom. Suddenly, a spear flew through the air, striking and killing a soldier before him. Yet, he remained calm, showing no signs of fear or distress. At that moment, the owner of the spear called out to him by name, Jin, asking why he was standing idly amidst the raging battle, wondering if he was exhausted. It was then revealed that this all took place during a clash with another army. Jin then leaped into the fray, cutting through enemy soldiers effortlessly with his sword. Afterward, he paused, smiled at his friend, and remarked that instead of worrying about others, his friend should focus on himself and what he was doing. His friend laughed and replied that Jin was always like this. Jin then charged back into the ranks of the enemy soldiers, mentioning that he had joined as a mercenary. He explained that people referred to those like him as martial arts mercenaries. After eliminating all the surrounding fighters, he stood and declared that the title suited him up to that point. Soon, an entire army arrived, and Jin commented on a famous saying, "Those who enter the world of mercenaries never leave except by death." Jin and his friend stood alone against this massive force. Jin continued, stating that once someone entered the mercenary life, there was no way out. However, he revealed his plan, determined to retire after completing this mission, firmly declaring he wouldn't die today. Jin and his friend stood back to back, preparing for the battle ahead. His friend suggested they go for a drink after the fight, while Jin teased him, betting on who would pass out first. In that moment, his friend asked him to stay alive and not die. Jin sarcastically responded, questioning who would die. He then told him to watch his back and dashed into the oncoming army. Later, eagles descended to the ground, landing near the bodies of the soldiers Jin and his friend had slain. Jin pulled his sword from the last soldier's body, declaring the battle over. He stood amidst the many fallen soldiers and told his friend that this retirement party had been exhausting, but his friend didn't respond. Jin turned to find his friend gravely wounded and called out to him in distress. Jin rushed to his side trying to help him, shocked and pleading for him to stay conscious and stand with him. However, realizing the severity of his wounds, Jin gently laid him on the ground, filled with deep sorrow. His friend opened his eyes and uttered the name Sowa, bringing a moment of joy to Jin as his friend Jang regained consciousness. Yet Jang's condition was dire. He handed Jin a pouch of money, entrusting him with the care of his daughter, Sowa, and begged him to look after her. Then, Jang passed away, leaving Jin heartbroken over the loss of his friend. The scene shifted to a graveyard where Jin stood before Jang's grave. He had come to pay his respects, bringing the drink they had promised to share after the battle and placing it on the grave. Jin spoke to Jang, mentioning his intention for that battle to be his last as a mercenary, questioning how Jang could leave him alone in this line of work. He felt conflicted about Jang's final request to care for his daughter, wondering if he should fulfill it. But first, he decided to meet the girl before making his decision. The scene shifted to Jin arriving at the village where Sowa lived. The place was remote, and its residents were in dire conditions. Jin observed the village and its people, finding it hard to believe that this was where his friend's daughter lived. Finally, with the help of a young boy, Jin reached the house where Sowa resided. The boy pointed out the house and confirmed it was the one Jin sought. Afterward, the boy asked for the money Jin had promised him for leading the way. Jin walks away, telling the boy he will pay him only after confirming that this is indeed Sowa's house. Jin opens the door and steps inside, followed by the young boy, only to be shocked by the state of the home. The house is completely empty, with even the few items present broken. There is only a small bed, where a young girl is lying. The girl is startled by their entry and asks who they are. The boy introduces himself as Eok, her neighbor, and she recognizes him. Jin asks if she is Sowa, Jang's daughter, and she confirms, but then asks who he is. Eok explains that Jin had been asking about her, so he brought him all the way from the village's entrance to her house. The girl looks at Jin and asks if he had come specifically to find her. Jin, however, senses that something is amiss. Jin hands Eok the money he had promised for guiding him, which makes Eok very happy and grateful. Sowa then asks Jin why he was looking for her. Jin explains that he was her father's colleague and that her father, in his final wishes, had asked him to come and find her. Hearing this, Sowa asks if her father has passed away since Jin is speaking about his final wishes. Jin remains silent, unsure of how to respond. Tears begin streaming down Sowa's face as she mourns her father's death. Jin tries to comfort her, saying he has just one question for her. He asks her directly, "Who are you?" In that instant, the girl attacks him with an incredibly powerful blow. Jin smiles afterward, commenting that the hit was very strong and asking what he would have done if her strike had paralyzed him. The girl doesn't reply but quickly rises to attack him again, delivering another powerful strike. Jin realizes that the girl possesses immense internal energy, thinking that if her blow had landed on a rock, it would have shattered it. This time, the girl kicks him forcefully while shouting at him to stay on the ground. She then shoves him with such strength that he crashes into the wall. Jin thinks to himself that this is no joke, and places his hand on his sword, wondering if he should use it. He looks at the girl, considering that if he truly used his sword, the situation would change drastically in an instant. At that moment, the wall behind him collapses, leaving debris around him as he falls to the ground. When he turns around, he sees the young boy, Eok, standing there with a large man who had broken the wall with a single blow of his hand. Simultaneously, the girl charges at Jin from behind with incredible speed. She manages to deliver a devastating blow to Jin's chest, causing him to cough up blood. The girl and the large man stand over Jin, who falls to the ground, overwhelmed by the onslaught. Jin hears the large man call the girl Shilsal and remark that she had taken too long to defeat Jin. The girl reflects on his words while they laugh together. At that moment, Jin recalls his first meeting with Jang, who had doubted Jin's ability to interrogate people and extract critical information without resorting to violence. Jin had explained to Jang that this approach often yielded better results because it allowed him to discern what his opponent knew and what they didn't. Jin added that there was one condition for this method to succeed in extracting the desired information. When Jang asked what that condition was, Jin replied that it required an extraordinary level of endurance. Returning to the present, we see Jin tied up and restrained, receiving another kick to his stomach from the large man. The man grabs Jin and tells him it's now his turn to ask the questions, demanding to know who Jin truly is. The girl, holding a knife and threatening him with it, warns him that it would be better to answer correctly, or his suffering would only double. Meanwhile, Eok stands outside the house, listening as Jin repeats what he had already told them, that he was Jang's friend, and that Jang had entrusted him with the care of his daughter, Sohwa. Eok also hears Jin asking the girl, "Who are you, and why are you doing this to me?" The girl placed the knife against Jin's neck, threatening him to stay silent because only they were allowed to ask questions here. She then asked him how he had figured out that she wasn't Sohwa. Jin replied that Sohwa knew him, but didn't know anything about him. Furious, the girl accused him of lying, stating that Jang had worked with mercenaries for 2 years, and none of his colleagues had ever visited this village before, nor had Jin ever come here. Jin realized at that moment that these people didn't know where Sohwa was either, and were searching for her, just like he was. The girl grew increasingly agitated, demanding that he tell them who he was, and share everything he knew, as she believed he might have clues about Sohwa's whereabouts. Jin answered that if he truly had such information, did she think he would be here doing what he was doing now? Suddenly, Jin began to shift and focus on the rope binding him, announcing that he was going to end this now. Both the girl and the large man were shocked at Jin's actions, unable to understand how he had freed himself from the rope. Jin gave them no time to process what was happening and struck the girl with a powerful blow, sending her flying into the wall behind her. The large man lunged at Jin from behind, attempting to grab him again, but Jin anticipated his move, turned, and delivered a strong punch to his stomach, slamming him violently to the ground. The girl watched as the large man lay motionless, realizing that Jin had used an advanced combat technique. She understood that Jin hadn't truly been captured, but had been pretending all along. Jin approached her, stating that he had a question for her, and assuring her that he didn't intend to kill her. If she answered him, he would let her go. She retorted that his words were meaningless, and that he should just kill her already. Jin asked if she truly wanted to die. She cursed him, and a moment later, she collapsed lifeless before him. Jin was stunned by her sudden death, especially since he had done nothing to cause it. Looking around, he noticed the young boy, Eok, standing nearby. In Eok's hand was a small whistle, and Jin realized that he had used it to kill the girl. Eok looked at Jin and commented that he had exceeded all their expectations. Jin replied that Eok had also been surprising, adding that killing his teammate in such a way showed great cruelty, and that the world had become chaotic for murder to be treated so lightly. Eok responded that he didn't know who Jin truly was, but warned him that he would regret getting involved with them. After these words, Eok suddenly died, leaving Jin deeply affected by his death. Jin thought about Jang, silently asking him what was happening here, and why professional killers were searching for his daughter so aggressively. He realized that he urgently needed more information to find Sohwa. Jin began pondering who might be able to help him in this place. The scene shifted to another part of the city, revealing a luxurious mansion. Inside the mansion, someone knelt before their leader. The leader asked if all three had been killed. The kneeling person, with their head bowed, confirmed this, saying they had all been slain. The leader remarked that he had understood that all three had been killed by a single individual. The subordinate confirmed this, explaining that the individual appeared to be highly skilled and possessed exceptional abilities. He described the person as a young man with a strong physique, but noted that they had been unable to gather additional information about him. The leader commented that Jin's techniques were so simple that it was difficult to identify the origins of the martial arts he employed. He then asked about Jin's movements afterward. The subordinate, whose name was later revealed to be Saji, reported that Jin had completely vanished after leaving the district, and they had been unable to track him. The leader told Saji that failing to follow someone meant that person was far from ordinary, and that matters were about to become even more complicated for them. After some thought, the leader tells Saji that perhaps this is the best course of action, and instructs him to continue monitoring Jin, as he might lead them to Sohwa and reveal her location. The scene transitions to a new setting, showing a beautiful house nestled among mountains and lush green landscapes. It becomes apparent that the house is used for shady purposes. Inside, a woman is seen sleeping on a bed when another girl enters, addressing her as Madame Lu. Madame Lu questions the girl about her abrupt entrance and waking her up like this. The girl explains that a guest is waiting to see her and has sent her a message. She shows Madame Lu a small object in her hand and says that the guest claims she would want to meet him upon seeing it. Upon seeing the object, Madame Lu rises quickly, and the girl adds that the guest also mentioned that there would be severe consequences if she refused to meet him. Indeed, Madame Lu goes to meet the guest, who turns out to be Jin. He greets her, remarking that it's been a long time since their last meeting, and calls her by the name Nan. Jin begins joking, asking why she hides her beautiful face behind such an ugly mask, and teases that perhaps she has developed spots on her face. Nan sarcastically replies that she had forgotten she was wearing the mask, as she's been used to it for so long. She then suggests he take off the mask himself, but quickly changes her mind, saying she doesn't want him to see her beautiful face. Jin cups her chin, and tells her that it bothers him because he had hoped to see her beautiful face again. She looks at him, saying he's being too much. Placing her hand on his face, she asks what he would do if her appearance had changed. Jin jokingly asks if she's jealous, adding that if she is, then she's the loser. Nan grows irritated and argues with him, saying his silly jokes haven't changed. She steps away, asking how he dared to come here again, noting that she hasn't heard of any bloody wars that might interest him recently. Jin replies that this isn't why he's here. Nan is surprised when Jin tells her he has decided to leave this line of work, and she doesn't believe him. They argue again, with her questioning if he means to quit being a mercenary entirely. He confirms this, stating that he'll leave as soon as he finishes his current mission, which is the reason he's here. She calms down and steps aside, then tells him that she never expected him to remain a mercenary for life, but still doesn't understand why he's here. Jin laughs sheepishly and tells her that he wants her help in finding a job. The scene shifts to Jin and Nan sitting together. Jin tells her that he doesn't want a job that involves bloodshed anymore, but still needs money, and doesn't know how to do anything else besides what he's used to as a mercenary. Nan sarcastically asks if this is why he shamelessly came to her for a job. Jin explains that he desperately needs money to complete the final mission he mentioned, and she responds that he's asking too much of her. Jin pleads with her, saying this is extremely important to him. Nan turns away in anger, refusing to answer. She then looks back at him, saying his expression makes her feel tricked. She informs him that one of their guards recently left, and with his skills, he could easily take the position. Jin feels overjoyed and grabs her hands, expressing his gratitude and thanking her warmly, saying he expected nothing less from her. She tells him to back off and explains that the job comes with 2 conditions. Jin asks about the conditions, assuring her that he's ready for anything as long as it doesn't involve dying. Nan states that the first condition is that he must not interact with any of the girls working at the establishment. Jin is shocked and upset by this condition, saying he believes in women's freedom to do as they please. Nan, however, becomes furious and firmly states that any relationship between the bodyguard and the girls working there is strictly prohibited, adding that if he doesn't like it, he can forget about the job. Jin accepts the first condition and asks Nan about the second. Nan explains that it's not a condition in the strict sense, but rather a request from her as his current employer. She informs him that she wants him to investigate a murder case. Jin looks surprised, saying he thought he was being hired as a bodyguard. Nan replies that this isn't typical bodyguard work, but that she trusts him, which is why she wants him to handle the case. She begins to add that if he solves the case, only for Jin to interrupt her, saying he will investigate it but wants something in return. He clarifies that his only request is to be paid up front, as he urgently needs the money for something important. Nan looks at him in astonishment, asking if he is suffering from a serious illness. Jin, annoyed, tells her to stop saying such ominous things, and she replies that she's never seen him this serious before. He tells her she can consider it a temporary matter, leaving Nan silent and unable to fully understand what's going on. After a moment, she sighs and says that there must be an important reason for him to travel all this way. She hands him a large pouch of money, explaining that she'll consider it an advance payment for his bodyguard duties. She requests that he return once he completes the urgent matter he mentioned. She insists that he must be back the next day without fail. Jin thanks her, addressing her as Madame Lu, and assures her that the bodyguard Jin will return very soon. After he leaves, Nan remarks that he's now a free mercenary. The scene transitions to another part of the city, revealing a library filled with books. Inside, a man sits reading a book and enjoying a drink in peaceful solitude. Suddenly, Jin enters and greets the man, saying it's been 5 years since they last saw each other in Sichuan. The man grows furious, throwing the book in his hand at Jin. Jin dodges the book, which falls to the ground as his hat slips off. Smiling, Jin remarks that he's happy to see him too. However, the man shows no joy and lunges at Jin, delivering blows in various directions. The two brawl, tearing the book to pieces during the fight. The man scolds Jin, saying that since mid-last year, he'd lost all news of him from Qinghai and assumed he was dead. Jin sarcastically replies that if he had died, many women would have mourned him, so he couldn't die even if he wanted to. Eventually, the man calms down, commenting that Jin hasn't changed and that even his silly sense of humor remains the same. The two sit down and talk. The man asks Jin how he knew he'd find him there. Jin explains that he heard about him and Nan from someone named Sam. The man looks visibly upset and asks Jin if he also visited Nan. Jin confirms that he did, and adds that he's currently working for her as a bodyguard. The man yells angrily, asking how Jin dared to return to Nan's place and work for her after everything that happened, questioning if he's lost his mind. Jin tries to calm him, explaining that the past is behind them and that he's not forcing Nan into anything. He clarifies that their arrangement is purely a business agreement. The man finally relaxes, saying that if Nan decided to hire him, she must have her reasons, though he describes Jin as someone completely insensitive. The man looks at Jin and sarcastically asks if he traveled all the way to Luoyang just to see him, adding that Jin must be chasing after another bloody disaster. Jin denies this, explaining that he's decided to retire from such work. The man skeptically asks if Jin has truly retired, and Jin confirms his decision. The man bursts into laughter, calling it a good joke, saying, "Jin, the great mercenary, retired." Jin responds that he knew the man wouldn't believe him. The man continues laughing, still in disbelief, while Jin explains that he has only 2 objectives. First, to find Sowa Zhang, and second, to identify the people pursuing her. The man begins to ponder and says, "Sowa is a girl?" He then asks Jin why the great mercenary is searching for a young girl. Jin recalls his friend Zhang and the moment of his death when Zhang entrusted him with taking care of his daughter. He explains to the man that Sowa is the daughter of his late friend Zhang, who died 6 months ago in Qinghai. Jin elaborates that Jang's last request was for him to deliver a final message to his daughter and care for her if possible, making it Jang's last wish and Jin's final mission. The man looks at him with curiosity and says he now understands the part about the girl, but asks about the people chasing her. Jin reveals an object in his hand, stating that those pursuing her aren't ordinary individuals. They are the kind who would use something like this. The man's face fills with fear and panic upon seeing the object. It becomes evident that Jin is holding strange black objects. The man identifies them as soul-binding horns and asks where Jin found such cursed items. Jin explains that he found them on the people who attacked him and adds that one of the women claimed to be Sowa to deceive him. She displayed exceptional skills. He clarifies that these individuals are desperately trying to find Sowa, but he still doesn't know why. Jin says he needs to locate her before they do, and to achieve that, he must uncover who these people are. The man comments that people who use soul-binding horns and possess such skills aren't ordinary at all. He adds that while he doesn't care what's happening, this case seems highly troubling and advises Jin that if he truly intends to retire, he should drop this mission. Jin agrees, saying the man is right, but he then recalls Jang dying in his arms. He asks the man for help, saying he's the only one who can find information about these people. The man asks if Jin is requesting him to find the daughter of his deceased friend, then quips that he must have lived far too long. Jin tells him this request is a repayment for the favor he did for him in the Hexy Pass 8 years ago, promising he'll help. Jin feels relieved and says he knew he could count on him. However, he's surprised when the man asks for payment in return, stating he never said he'd do it for free. Jin tries to guilt-trip him, saying the man claimed he was helping out of gratitude, but it turns out money is all that matters to him. The man replies that while gratitude is why he agreed to take on the task, gratitude and money are entirely separate matters. Jin pulls out a pouch of money and tells him he knows him well, which is why he got an advance from Nan. He hands over the pouch, saying the amount should be sufficient. The man takes the money, remarking that Jin is an odd fellow, having secured a job and an advance from Nan. He assures Jin he'll work diligently now that he's been paid. Jin thanks him and leaves, saying he'll wait for news. The scene transitions to Jin returning to Nan's home, where he asks her about the case she wanted him to investigate. Nan recounts that 3 days ago, a murder occurred in another brothel called Song. She explains that a worker there named Haibong was killed, along with the son of a Luoyang official named Yang. She mentions that a suspect named Zhang was arrested. Nan adds that Zhang was found at the crime scene holding a bloodied sword. However, she notes that the issue is that Zhang claims he doesn't remember anything about what happened. She shares with sorrow that the arrested individual is the son of her close friend, who was like a sister to her before her death 3 years ago. Nan adds that Zhang and his sister Seol are like her own niece and nephew, recalling Seol's devastated reaction as she cried over her brother. She emphasizes that both she and Seol are convinced Yang could never have committed such a crime, and asks Jin to uncover the truth, saying he's the only one who can do it. The scene shifts to the city morgue, where Jin enters and speaks to one of the workers, stating that he's here on behalf of Madame Lu, and that he's the bodyguard investigating the case. The morgue attendant leads Jin into the dissection room, but urges him to finish quickly to avoid drawing attention, especially since the case has caused an uproar among the authorities. Jin examines the 2 victims' bodies, assuring the attendant he will complete his inspection swiftly. The attendant is astonished as he watches Jin handle the corpse's hand without hesitation, marveling at the hardened demeanor of mercenaries. Jin inspects Yang's wounds and arm, appearing to reach an important conclusion. He informs the attendant that he's done examining the body, but the attendant interrupts, asking if he also wants to see the woman's body. Jin replies that since 2 people died, he can't settle for inspecting just one body, though the attendant seems hesitant. Jin considers how morgue workers often behave this way, fostering mistrust among people. While lost in thought, Jin is startled by the arrival of morgue officials, who are furious about his unauthorized presence. The attendant denies knowing anything and swears ignorance. One official grabs Jin, but Jin immediately twists the man's arm and strikes another official. A third official arrives, shocked to see the scene and Jin's actions against his colleagues. The official shouts, demanding to know how Jin dares to assault morgue staff. Jin looks at him and realizes this is Budoji. Budoji yells at the workers, questioning their silence, and orders them to apprehend Jin immediately. Jin quickly apologizes, explaining that he didn't know Budoji was a government official, and introduces himself as Madame Lu's bodyguard. Budoji calms down and questions how Jin claims to work for Madame Lu when he has never seen him at her place before. Jin explains that he recently started working for her and conveys greetings from Madame Lu. Budoji understands the implication and realizes he can't afford to antagonize Jin or Nan, as it might affect the payments he regularly receives from her. Jin decides to leverage Nan's influence, and tells Budoji that he's there under Madame Lu's orders to investigate the case. He adds that Madame Lu instructed him to conduct a thorough and expedited investigation, including completing the autopsies before the bodies deteriorate further. Budoji responds that there are procedures that must be followed for autopsies. Jin asks if he's certain, warning that any delay could hinder the investigation and anger Madame Lu. Nervous, Budoji agrees to let Jin proceed as he wishes. Jin thanks him and returns to examining the bodies. Before beginning, Jin advises those present that if they can't handle the sight, it's better not to look, as he's about to start the dissection. During the examination, Jin finds something unusual inside the body. He pulls out a ring and wonders about its significance. The scene transitions to Nan's home, where Budoji arrives to apologize to her for what happened. Nan tells him it was her fault for not informing him beforehand. She explains that the accused, Jong, is like a nephew to her, and while she doesn't doubt the official government investigation, she wants to uncover the truth as quickly as possible, just as he does. She speaks of Jin, highlighting his exceptional skills and expressing confidence in his ability to solve the case swiftly. Meanwhile, Jin stands behind a curtain, eavesdropping on their conversation. Nan asks Budoji to cooperate with Jin. She then hands Budoji a large pouch of money, making him delighted as he promises to work with Jin on the investigation. After Budoji leaves, Nan calls out to Jin, revealing that she knew he was standing there listening all along. Jin approaches her and asks if she's calling him over to reward him for his skills as a bodyguard. Nan was furious with Jin's actions and started hitting him with her fan, scolding him for causing trouble despite her explicit instructions to avoid it. She pointed out that he was still new to the job, yet had already begun creating problems. She asked if he had lost his mind by attacking government officials. She continued, saying that if the official had been anyone other than Budoji, Jin would have been arrested by now. Jin defended himself, saying they had started the altercation, but she cut him off, yelling that his body worked fine, but his brain didn't. After calming down, Nan asked him to stop acting the way he always did, emphasizing the need to maintain her reputation as the owner of the largest brothel in the city. She then inquired if he had found anything during the autopsy. Jin replied that he had indeed discovered some things but still needed time to investigate further, as he couldn't draw conclusions so quickly. Nan asked if he was just trying to pique her curiosity, but then she instructed him to go to Yang immediately. Jin, however, said that Yang could wait a little longer. When she asked why, he explained that he first needed to visit the crime scene and asked if they could gain access. Nan assured him that, as a member of the Luoyang Guild Association, it wouldn't be difficult. Jin expressed his relief and asked her to arrange for them to visit the scene immediately, reassuring her that it wouldn't take long. The scene shifted to a beautiful young woman introducing herself as Anna Seon, explaining that she was there at Madame Lu's request. When Jin saw her, he recognized her as one of Zhang's courtesans, the owner of the Song brothel, and wondered how such a stunning woman could be at a mid-level brothel. Seon then informed Jin that she had received a message from Nan and asked if he needed further investigation into the case. Jin confirmed that he did. The two proceeded to the crime scene. Jin explained that the accused was part of Madame Lu's family, so she was doing everything she could to help. Seon said she understood, but informed him that the crime scene had been completely renovated. She added that everything, including the wallpaper, had been removed and likely dumped at the waste-burning site, which might still have the discarded materials since it wasn't a burn day. Jin noticed the way Seon walked and felt he had seen her before. When Seon noticed his odd behavior, she asked if something was bothering him. He replied that nothing was wrong, but added that he couldn't take his eyes off her because of her extraordinary beauty, which made her laugh and thank him for the compliment. Jin then asked Seon to show him the room where the crime occurred, and mentioned he needed to speak to the staff and courtesans who had served the victims. Seon led him to the room, keeping a close watch on him with a peculiar gaze. Jin arrived at the area where the discarded furniture was kept, and began examining everything, trying to piece together what might have happened. They then reached the room where Bong, the victim, had been staying. Jin glanced around before stepping inside and noticed another door. He asked Seon about it, and she explained that it was an emergency exit meant for unforeseen situations. Jin also spotted a window in the room and approached it, opening it to look outside. He wondered why Bong had chosen such an isolated room. He reflected on what he might have done in her place, and realized that choosing this room, far from the main staircase, gave her time to sense anyone's sudden arrival. This setup would allow her to prepare for an ambush, and after defending herself, she would have an opportunity to escape through either the emergency door or the side window. Jin felt he now understood the strategic advantages of the room. However, he sensed there was one last detail he needed to confirm. At that moment, someone was watching Jin as he stood by the window, analyzing his deductions. It was revealed that the observer was none other than the beautiful Seon, who clearly recognized Jin and seemed to know him already. The scene transitions to the prison where Jong, Nan's nephew, is being held. Jin arrives to visit him and starts the conversation by acknowledging the hardships Jong has been through recently. At that moment, Jong quickly stands up and asks if Jin is the person his aunt Nan sent to help him. Jin confirms and tells him to address him as bodyguard Jin. Jong runs toward him, pleading for help, adamantly asserting his innocence and that he didn't kill anyone. He breaks into tears, confessing that he knows he's caused his aunt a lot of trouble and stress, but he swears he didn't kill anyone and couldn't even harm an insect. Jin looks at him strangely before reassuring him that everything will be fine. At this moment, it's revealed that Jin possesses a unique ability to identify killers. Jin appears to view Jong through a lens similar to X-ray vision, confirming his belief in Jong's innocence. He recalls a past event where he witnessed a group of thugs harassing a poor man, attempting to extort money from him for working in their territory. When they noticed Jin, they questioned his identity and why he was there. Jin used his unique ability to discern killers and saw the thugs marked with the same aura he saw in Jong, except the victim's aura was distinct. When one of the thugs attacked Jin, he swiftly overpowered him, provoking the rest of the gang to attack. After dealing with all of them, Jin approached the victim. The man thanked him for saving him from the thugs, but Jin questioned whether he thought he could deceive him with his disguise. Jin revealed that he knew the man was a traitor from the 9th Underworld sect. At that moment, the traitor tried to attack and kill Jin, but Jin quickly eliminated him, acknowledging to himself how valuable his ability was in his line of work. Returning to the present, Jin tells Jong that what he saw is enough for him to make a decision. Jong is surprised and asks if that's all Jin has to say. Jin leaves, reassuring him that he'll hear good news soon. Jong is left puzzled, wondering how Jin could conclude his investigation after just one question. Jong calls after him, pleading for more thorough investigations to save him from the accusation. But Jin walks away, confident he already has all the information he needs. Later, Jin heads to Nan's home to report what happened. Nan is incredulous that the investigation concluded so quickly. Jin confidently explains that his investigative skills are exceptional and that the case wasn't overly complicated. Nan remarks that he's quite arrogant and asks if he means that Jong is the killer. Jin clarifies that Jong is innocent and didn't commit the crimes. Nan breathes a sigh of relief, expressing her gratitude and asking if that means Jong will be released soon. Jin assures her that once his innocence is proven, he'll be freed immediately, likely the next day, adding that it's not a difficult task for him. Nan suddenly stands, grabbing Jin's hand to thank him, saying that none of this would have been possible without him. Jin is surprised by her gesture, and Nan, realizing what she did, quickly lets go and steps back, simply thanking him for his efforts in solving the case. Jin responds that he's happy to help. However, Jin adds that they can't relax just yet, explaining that this case isn't merely a crime of passion, but part of a conflict between two martial arts factions. Shocked, Nan asks him to elaborate, pointing out that Yang, the victim, was just an ordinary young man, dismissing the idea of his involvement in such a conflict. Jin agrees, clarifying that neither Yang nor Jong had any connection to the factions, but their misfortune brought them into the incident. Nan then asks if he means that Bong, the other victim, was the true target. Jin tells Nan that this is exactly what happened, explaining that Bong wasn't just an ordinary courtesan, but a spy for the Military Alliance Intelligence, working under the Wind Bell Division. He elaborates that during Bong's autopsy, he discovered traces of a rare stone and marks indicating secret techniques exclusive to the Wind Bell Division. Additionally, her room was arranged in a way that facilitated quick escapes in case of danger. Nan asks why a spy from the Military Alliance would hide in an insignificant brothel like Song's. Jin responds that he doesn't know, emphasizing that the Military Alliance's plans are always intricate and beyond understanding. He adds that he'll reveal more in court. However, Nan insists on knowing the truth, convinced that Jin already knows the real killer. Jin admits that he does, but stresses that the case isn't straightforward. He warns her that revealing everything could put her brothel and even her life in danger. He asks if she still wants to know. Nan hesitates and remains silent, but Jin assures her that as her employee, he'll share the truth if she demands it. Nan interrupts him, saying she understands, and is content with what he's said so far. Relieved, Jin leaves, stating that this is the right decision. He explains that in this world, ignorance can be a blessing, while knowledge may be a curse. He reassures her that she'll know everything she needs to in court the next day. Later, Jin returns to his lodging but senses something unusual. He grips his sword and addresses the hidden figure, remarking that the night dew is thick and could harm her beautiful skin, suggesting she come inside. Suddenly, he's attacked by an unknown assailant upon entering. A fierce battle ensues. The attacker comments on Jin's retained skills, expressing satisfaction. The attacker leaps swiftly, wielding dual weapons, but fails to strike Jin, who manages to block the assault and counterattack with his sword. However, the highly skilled attacker evades his strike and counters with force, causing Jin to fall. The attacker gains the upper hand and pins Jin onto the bed, mockingly asking why he's lost his former fierceness. Jin replies that he didn't recognize her immediately in the daylight. She admits they haven't seen each other in 4 years and that she missed him terribly, revealing herself as Sion, whom Jin met during his investigation. She confesses she knew he'd expect her arrival. Jin acknowledges that he did, adding that he barely recognized her because she's become even more beautiful. Sion retorts that he remains a master liar, capable of deceit without even moving his lips. Jin tells her he had no idea she was in Luoyang, and she responds that she's been working there for 6 months. Jin remarks that working with the old man must have been difficult, but Sion replies it wasn't, especially since the old man was immobile. She then asks Jin what he's uncovered in the case. Jin summarizes his findings: an accidental death, a tampered crime scene, a false accusation against Jong, and the involvement of the Windbell Division. He adds that he also discovered her key role in the 9th Underworld sect. Sion praises his intelligence and asks if he intends to expose this information. She seems relieved when Jin assures her that his only mission is to clear Jong's name. Jin continues, stating that she's the leader of the 9th Underworld sect's 5th division, and that her position in such a brothel is intriguing. Sion offers to explain her presence there if Jin promises to join her faction. He politely declines, saying she already knows his answer. Sion agrees, acknowledging that Jin dislikes being tied to any group and prefers living freely among the various martial arts sects. Sion tells Jin that if what she knows is revealed, the Military Alliance will intervene, forcing her and her team to retreat. She then asks if he can let this matter go just this once for her sake. Jin replies that he must prove Yang's innocence to earn his payment. She offers him 10 times the amount, but he refuses, explaining that it goes against his professional principles. Seon, surprised, asks if he's serious, and he confirms he is and won't accept her offer. Frustrated, she demands to know since when he started caring about such things, and Jin responds that it's been since he arrived in Luoyang. Feeling upset, Seon tells him it's unfair to talk to her like this after ruining the operation she'd been working on for 6 months. Jin asks if she hates him now, but Seon sighs, embraces him, and admits she wishes she could hate him. She then looks at him and comments on how he's become even more attractive, which annoys and angers her more than ever. She hugs him tightly, bids him farewell, and says they will meet again. The scene transitions to the next day at the Luoyang courthouse. Inside, Yang is present as the judge announces the commencement of the trial for the murder at the Song brothel. Nan and Seol, Yang's sister, attend the trial, with Jin also present. The judge addresses the lead investigator, mentioning that he claimed there's a real killer other than Zhang, which led to reopening the case. The judge warns that the consequences will not be light if the claim proves false. The lead investigator, revealed to be named Jo Hong, greets the judge and affirms his assertion. He explains that he noticed peculiarities in the case after reviewing the interviews conducted with the Song brothel staff. Jo Hong points out that on the day of the incident, many people were near the room where Zhang and Yang were, yet no one heard the screams of Bong, only those of Yang. He adds that Zhang was apprehended mere seconds after Yang's scream, an unusually short time frame. Despite these oddities, everyone assumed Zhang was the culprit due to rumors of a romantic affair. Jo Hong continues, stating that realizing the case required further investigation, he sought the help of a specialist in such matters to reinvestigate. He then turns to Jin, asking him to present his findings. Jin stands before the court, introducing himself as the investigator assigned to re-examine the case, presenting his conclusions on behalf of the lead investigator. The judge grants him permission to proceed. Jin begins by asking Yang if he still doesn't recall anything from the day of the crime. Zhang confirms he doesn't remember and can't testify to anything about it. Jin addresses the court, stating that during his work among martial arts factions, he gathered knowledge of a rare and secret poison. He explains that this poison is called Mahu, a terrifying substance often used against women. It is colorless, odorless, and undetectable in the victim's body afterward. Jin elaborates that on the day of the incident, the real culprit could have mixed the poison into Zhang's drink, or made him inhale its powder. He adds that anyone poisoned with Mahu is compelled to obey the one who poisoned them and carry out their orders. Everyone in the courtroom, including Nan and Seol, is shocked by Jin's explanation. Jo Hong corroborates Jin's statement, prompting the judge to ask Jin to continue. Jin announces that he will move on to his next point and approaches the containers holding the bodies, explaining that he will examine them in front of the court. Holding the victim's hands, Jin points out that by observing the two bodies, distinct differences can be seen compared to a typical murder case. He explains that Bong's hands have clear cuts and stab wounds, unlike Yang's hands. Jin adds that these are known as defensive wounds, occurring when a person tries to fend off an attack using their arms. Jin observes that Yang's hands show no similar wounds, concluding that Bong was well trained in martial arts, enabling her to defend herself during the attack. He continues, pointing out that the wounds on the victims are unusual, and he demonstrates his findings practically using an animal carcass. Approaching the carcass, Jin explains that a practical demonstration will clarify his point, thanking the individual who helped suspend the animal for this purpose. He then asks the assistant to strike the carcass, noting that an ordinary person, even with a razor-sharp weapon, cannot produce clean cuts due to a lack of proper technique, resulting in uneven wound edges. Jin then draws his own weapon, explaining that a person trained in martial arts and weapon handling can create clean, precise wounds. He demonstrates by slicing the animal carcass cleanly in half with one stroke of his blade, comparing the result to the wounds found on the victims. The judge interjects, asking Jin what this implies. Jin responds, precisely. This case is not a mere tale of love and jealousy. It is a conflict between two highly skilled martial artists. He further elaborates that this case, in essence, is significant enough to require military alliance intervention. Jin then explains the broader context, revealing that with increasing chaos inside and outside the nation, the imperial family's power has been gradually waning, while the military alliance has grown considerably stronger. So much so that they began managing security in regions outside the government's control, initiating a power struggle between the two entities. This struggle eventually led to the signing of the Wuhan Agreement, named after the city in Hubei province, where the military alliance headquarters is located. Jin elaborates that the agreement stipulates that investigations and punishments involving martial artists must be handled by the martial artists themselves. The judge reflects on the case's complexity and concludes that military alliance intervention is indeed necessary. He asks Jin if this is correct, and Jin confirms without a doubt. Jin highlights that the wounds on Bong and Yang's bodies number over 80, pointing out that such sharp, precise injuries, with enough force to cut through bone, could only be inflicted by someone trained in martial arts. Jin then turns to Zhang, emphasizing that he has never trained in martial arts, making it impossible for him to have caused these injuries. At this point, Zhang is overwhelmed, crying in fear for his fate. Jin declares to the court that he has additional evidence to prove Yang's innocence. He reveals that the murder weapon found in Zhang's possession at the crime scene is the evidence in question. Holding up the knife, Jin points out that it is an ordinary kitchen knife. He argues that if it had been used to cut through bones, there would be clear signs of wear or damage on the blade. Jin further explains that one of Bong's ribs bears a wound caused by an exceptionally sharp and precise blade, a type of injury that cannot be inflicted by a kitchen knife. Addressing the court, Jin asserts that the real killer tampered with the crime scene but failed to erase all traces. He concludes that considering all the evidence, the killer is a professional martial artist who used a highly refined weapon. Jin explains that after killing Bong and Yang, the killer staged the crime scene to frame Zhang. The courtroom erupts in shock, with murmurs spreading among the attendees. Nan and Seol appear deeply moved by Jin's revelations. The judge reflects on how fortunate they were not to report Yang as the killer to the central government. He then asks Jin if he has identified the true killer. As the courtroom grows tense, Chief Investigator Hoyong turns to an elderly man in the audience and asks why he's staring at him. The man responds confidently that Hoyong's suspicions are baseless. Hoyong clarifies that while he doesn't believe Madame Liu is directly involved in the case, It's evident that some courtesans from the song brothel must be implicated. He explains that based on Jin's findings, it would have been impossible for Jong to be drugged and framed without assistance from one of the courtesans. Hoyoung continues, stating that aside from the real killer, there must be an accomplice among the courtesans. The elderly man dismisses this as conjecture, but Hoyoung reveals that before the trial, he sent forces to investigate the brothel. He adds that the investigation uncovered the disappearance of all the courtesans working at the brothel, including Seon, along with 4 other courtesans and 6 maids. The revelation stuns everyone in the courtroom, including the judge, as the disappearance of 11 individuals is unprecedented. Addressing the judge, Hoyoung emphasizes that this crime is clearly not a result of jealousy or a love affair, but rather a conspiracy involving a significant martial arts faction. He strongly recommends seeking military alliance assistance immediately to capture the real killer. The judge, conflicted, deliberates while aware that many are watching him, awaiting his decision. Finally, he announces the verdict, declaring Jong innocent and ordering his immediate release. The scene shifts to a street called Cheong in Luoyang, where Seon is seen in one of the houses. One of her workers approaches, informing her that everything has been relocated and all traces of their presence erased, ensuring no one can find them. The worker then hesitates and asks if Seon is certain they did the right thing, pointing out that they retreated before receiving orders from their superiors, which might result in punishment. Seon confidently reassures her, handing her an envelope to deliver to Lord Young. The worker, feeling reassured, takes the envelope but hesitates momentarily, proposing an alternative solution. She suggests eliminating the investigator from the brothel case to avoid any future problems. Seon is shocked by the suggestion but bursts into laughter, remarking on an old saying about how small dogs fearlessly challenge tigers, comparing this to the worker's behavior. She sternly advises against thinking that way again, explaining that only a select few in the 9th Underworld sect, including Seon herself, know the truth about this investigator. When the worker asks why, Seon explains that it's because no one who has ever fought Jin has lived to tell the tale. The scene transitions to Jin, who is visibly elated as he holds a large pouch filled with money. Seol, Jong's sister, thanks Jin, and explains that the pouch is a reward for his efforts in saving her brother. She adds that it's insufficient for what he's done, and that he deserves much more. Blushing, she calls him a hero and offers her services at Nan's establishment if he permits. Jin smiles, seemingly about to accept, but freezes when Nan screams at him to accept Seol's reward and end the matter quickly. He immediately complies. Nan yells at Jin again, saying he's hopeless. Jin laughs, responding that it's not his fault. Girls are naturally drawn to him and can't resist his charm, and he hasn't done anything to encourage it. Nan retorts that he shouldn't speak this way, especially in front of Seol, whom she considers like a niece. She angrily asks if he's even human. Jin playfully asks why she's angry at him, reminding her that he never embarrasses anyone. As Jin quickly walks away, he calls out to Nan, addressing her as Madame Lu, which infuriates her further. She yells after him, complaining that he only calls her that in similar situations. As he leaves, Nan feels a mix of anger and frustration at his antics, while Seol observes from a distance, chuckling at the exchange. The scene transitions to Jin returning to his room, where he notices something off. Upon inspecting the door, he realizes that someone has broken into his room during his absence, and this time, it's not related to Seon. Jin readies himself with his sword, sensing the presence of someone with martial arts mastery. He bursts into the room, finding someone calmly sitting in the dark, sipping tea. The figure looks at Jin and questions his sudden entrance, adding that fine tea should be enjoyed in peace. Jin, still on guard, replies that he doesn't recall inviting anyone to drink tea in his room. Using his abilities, Jin assesses the intruder's presence and discovers that the individual is concealing immense power, further piquing his curiosity. The person calmly tells Jin not to be tense, explaining that he's only there to talk. The intruder laughs, mentioning that openly entering a brothel might lead to rumors reaching his wife, which could cause him great trouble. Jin quips, asking if he's under his wife's control, to which the man replies, laughing, that he prefers to call it loyalty. The man introduces himself as Eon, known by the title The Indestructible Diamond Cloud, and assumes Jin recognizes him. However, Jin's lack of recognition surprises Eon. Eon questions if Jin truly doesn't know the leader of the Luoyang branch of the military alliance, renowned as the Indestructible Diamond Cloud. Jin sarcastically responds that someone so important is casually drinking tea in someone else's room uninvited. Eon explains that he didn't exactly steal the tea, but suggests Jin forget about it as the story is too complicated to explain. He then mentions hearing about how Jin successfully cleared Jong's name. Eon looks at Jin, stating that since Jin uncovered the truth, he must also know the identity and motive of the killer. Jin ponders whether the Windbell division failed to inform the Luoyang branch, and then replies that he knows nothing of what Eon is asking. Eon questions Jin again, seeking confirmation, and Jin deflects, saying that the government requested the military alliance's cooperation, so Eon should direct his inquiries to them. Eon, unconvinced, asserts that the government likely knows less than Jin, and asks if Jin is hiding something. Jin meets Eon's gaze challengingly, and asks if he intends to force the information out of him. Eon rises and tells Jin to forget the matter for now, adding that he came today simply to meet him. He compliments Jin for treating the Indestructible Diamond Cloud like an ordinary person. As Eon departs, he confidently says they will meet again soon, to which Jin sarcastically responds that he still doesn't know who Eon is talking about. In the next scene, Jin visits the library and meets a man whose name is finally revealed as Sayoko. Jin asks if he's uncovered any information about Sowa. Sayoko suggests they have a drink first. Jin asks what occasion calls for such fine liquor. Sayoko, sipping his drink, replies that this drink is essential to mitigate the smell of blood that is about to spread. Jin, both concerned and curious, questions if Sayoko has discovered something that could lead to bloodshed, then takes a sip of his drink. He remarks that the scent of blood is nothing new to them, and urges Sayoko to reveal what he has learned. Sayoko finally shares that he's found Sowa's location. He informs Jin that Sowa is in an abandoned shrine east of a place called Mansan, guarded by an old man. Jin remarks on how quickly Sowa was found, faster than he anticipated. Sayoko responds, explaining that he recently managed to track her movements within Luoyang itself. Jin rises and insists they head to her location immediately, but Sayoko remains seated and asks if Jin has ever heard of the Blood Serpent Hall. Sayoko elaborates, revealing that the Blood Serpent Hall is also searching for Sowa. Jin, puzzled, admits he knows nothing about them and asks who they are. The scene shifts to Jin arriving east of Mansan, standing amidst graves and reflecting on Sayoko's words. Jin recalls Sayoko explaining that even he must have heard of the Ashura blood sect. Sayoko shared how the leader of the Blood Serpent Hall had changed 6 years ago and started employing the sect's martial arts techniques. Sayoko also revealed that the Ashura blood sect was the last known group to use the soul-binding horn and the black venom elixir. Jin continues pondering Sayoko's description of the sect while searching for the ancient shrine hidden among the graves. Suddenly, he notices other individuals moving in the same area and decides to follow them to save himself the trouble of searching further. He tails the group, consisting of 3 highly skilled men moving swiftly, until they reach the abandoned shrine. Their leader announces they've finally found the place and orders the other 2 to enter the shrine. Jin suddenly appears beside the leader, sarcastically commenting that this is where they've been hiding all along. The leader, startled, draws his weapon and swings at Jin, who easily dodges and remarks that he's just a bodyguard from a brothel. The leader's astonishment grows as Jin disarms him with a single strike, following up with a powerful kick that sends him flying. Jin then notices the other 2 men charging at him. He grabs the leader's weapon and manages to take down one of them before they reach him. The third man, witnessing his comrade's fate, decides to rush into the shrine instead. However, as he reaches the door, Jin appears behind him and dispatches him as well, eliminating all 3 men. Jin approaches the shrine door and opens it. Inside, he finds the old man who had been guarding Sowa, sitting motionless on the ground. As Jin approaches, he discovers that the man is dead, with a large cover beside him concealing another figure. Jin moves toward the cover, calling out to Sowa and telling her to come out if she's still alive. A frightened young girl slowly removes the cover, asking Jin who he is in a trembling voice. Jin, deeply affected, tries to reassure her and tells her he was a friend of her father. The scene shifts outside the shrine, showing the 3 corpses Jin defeated before entering. Suddenly, another group arrives at the location, and their leader remarks that they're too late. The leader informs his 4 subordinates that the person inside the shrine managed to eliminate 6 of the 10 Blood Serpent Hall members, indicating that he's a formidable enemy. He orders them to use all means necessary to kill Jin and to secure Sowa at all costs. Returning to the shrine, Jin introduces himself to the girl. She calls him Uncle Jin, as if she knows him. Jin asks if she's met him before, and she explains that her father often wrote about him in his letters. However, she suddenly shows signs of extreme exhaustion and nearly collapses. Jin quickly catches her before she falls, overcome with concern. He observes her frail body and realizes how much she suffered recently, noting that her small frame has endured far more than it should. Deeply moved, Jin suddenly senses movement outside the shrine. He tells Sowa that they'll continue their conversation later, swiftly hoists her onto his back, and secures her with his belt. Jin draws his sword, telling Sowa they have uninvited guests and that he needs to deal with them now. At that moment, one of the 4 group members bursts into the shrine and attacks with his sword. Jin swiftly blocks the strike but notices another sword emerging from the shrine's floor beneath them. Moving quickly, Jin avoids the strike, causing the 2 attackers to collide with each other. Jin seizes the opportunity, attacking one of the men and fatally stabbing him. The second man, enraged, charges at Jin, who leaps into the air to dodge the attack and lands on the attacker's sword arm. With a powerful move, Jin breaks the man's arm, causing him to drop his weapon, and then finishes him off as well. Jin looks at the fallen attackers and remarks that they should have chosen their opponent more carefully before attacking him. Jin then turns to the old man's lifeless body, thanking him for protecting Sowa during his life and assuring him to rest in peace, as Jin will take over from here. As Jin and Sowa leave the shrine, they are suddenly ensnared by a large net thrown over them. Jin swiftly swings his sword in all directions, cutting the net into pieces. Another attacker from the group begins hurling small weapons at Jin, but he deflects them with his sword and sends one back toward the attacker, killing him. Simultaneously, the 4th attacker appears behind Jin and attempts to strike. Jin evades the attack and delivers a powerful punch to the assailant, asking if he knows whom he's facing. The blow sends the attacker flying, crashing into the ground multiple times before hitting a large tree, where he dies. Jin sighs after eliminating the attackers, but notices another figure moving strangely toward him. He blocks the attack and realizes it's the leader of the 4 men he just defeated. Jin recognizes the technique as a stealth method and understands that an ordinary person wouldn't have been able to detect it. The leader is astonished that Jin blocked his strike and wonders aloud if Jin can see him despite his stealth technique. The leader attempts another attack, but Jin parries the strike and counters with a sword slash, injuring the leader's shoulder. The leader, now unable to maintain his stealth, freezes in place and asks Jin how he could see him. Jin replies that he has encountered far more advanced stealth techniques than this, and asks if that's all the leader has to offer. The leader admits he now understands, acknowledging Jin's exceptional martial arts skills, stating that even the 10 Blood Serpent Hall members couldn't defeat him. He concedes that attacking Jin was a mistake, and requests that they end the fight. Jin points his sword at him, calling his words empty and stating that he cannot start a fight and then decide when it ends. The leader tries to negotiate, asking for a chance to speak before being killed, insisting that there are many things Jin doesn't know about this matter. He then reveals his identity, introducing himself as Eok Jang, the leader of the Blood Serpent Hall. Eok removes his mask and tells Jin that he is Jang's elder brother and Sowa's uncle. He asks Jin to lower his weapon and give him a chance to explain. Hearing this, Jin recalls his time with Jang and realizes that Jang never mentioned any family when speaking of Sowa. Jin looks at Eok, pondering that whatever Eok says is irrelevant. He asks Eok what significance his claims hold. Jin clarifies that Jang's only request was for Jin to protect his daughter, Sowa. He firmly states that no matter Eok's relation to Sowa, if he stands in the way of this mission, Jin will eliminate him without hesitation. Eok attempts to persuade Jin to reconsider, but Jin ignores him and speaks to Sowa, asking her to endure a little longer. Jin then launches his attack on Eok, who pleads for him to stop, questioning why Jin is acting this way, especially since he has no blood ties to Sowa. Jin replies that this is true, but he will still fulfill his mission. He raises his sword, ready to finish Eok. Even as Eok employs his stealth technique again, Jin manages to pinpoint his location and deliver a fatal strike. In his final moments, Eok wonders about someone else's delayed arrival and why they hadn't come yet. Jin sheaths his sword, pondering aloud whether mercenaries need any motivation beyond completing their tasks. Turning to Sowa, Jin notices she has fainted. He assures her she cannot die now, stating he didn't come all this way to bury her. He quickly carries her and leaves the shrine. After Jin departs, the shrine remains filled with 2 corpses inside and 4 outside, including Eok Jang's body. Shortly after, the person Eok had been waiting for arrives, looking at his body with disappointment and muttering that Eok had failed him again. He adds that if Eok didn't want such a humiliating end, he should have warned him that the person who killed the 3 Blood Serpent Hall members in the poor village was Jin Muyang. The man muses about thinking Jin was still in Qinghai and questions why he's here and why he's taken Sohwa with him. The scene shifts to Jin, who has brought Sohwa to Nan's home. He places her on a bed, covers her, and stays by her side to ensure she's okay. Nan enters to check on the girl as well, and asks Jin if this is his friend's daughter. Jin confirms and adds that thanks to the doctor Nan brought, Sohwa's condition has improved. Nan responds that she doesn't do anything for free and will recoup every penny she spent. Jin laughs, saying he's well aware and doesn't intend to rely on her any further. Nan is surprised when Jin tells her he won't stay much longer and asks what he means. Jin explains that people are hunting Sohwa and won't give up easily. Staying there would put the place in danger, so they must leave before anything happens. Nan becomes angry, asking if Jin thinks she's someone to be underestimated. She declares that she's Madame Lu, the woman who built the largest brothel in Luoyang, defeated all her rivals, and secured the loyalty of high-ranking officials and influential figures. She assures Jin that no one can storm her home to take the girl, and if they try, they'll regret it. Nan adds that she won't let anything happen to the girl, and insists that Jin stay by her side to protect her, no matter what. Jin concedes, admitting he cannot argue against her. Nan tells him she doubts he'll find a better place to care for the little girl, pointing out the numerous responsibilities he's already juggling. Jin laughs and replies, "Understood, Madame Lu." Nan then remarks that Jin's skills are wasted as a mere bodyguard, and asks if he's considered side jobs like being an escort or mercenary. Jin is surprised by her suggestion, but she explains that she knows he mentioned not wanting to spill blood anymore, yet he also admitted needing money, especially now that he's responsible for a child. This, she points out, means he'll need even more funds. Nan adds that not all jobs involve bloodshed, and reminds him that her establishment hosts all kinds of people, ensuring he'll never run out of work opportunities. Jin says he'll think about it, and before leaving, Nan tells him she'll await his decision, assuring him that Sohwa can stay there for now. After she leaves, Jin sits beside Sohwa, contemplating their situation, an unmarried man with a young child to care for in such difficult circumstances. During this time, Sohwa has a strange dream where she feels as if she's floating in the sky, surrounded by a beam of light. Suddenly she wakes up and opens her eyes, unsure of her current surroundings. Jin notices she's awake and feels relieved, reassuring her that she's safe now and has nothing to worry about. Sohwa rises from the bed and approaches Jin, attempting to speak with him, but he advises her not to overexert herself since she's still weak and was close to death. He then mentions that he has many questions for her and would like her to answer them if she can. She agrees, saying she'll answer what she knows. Jin begins by asking why assassins are pursuing her and why her father didn't inform her of the predicament before his death. Sohwa, visibly affected, explains that she made a grave mistake, which led to her uncle hunting her and her father. To protect her, her father left her with the old servant Nusa, believing it was the only way to keep her safe. Jin, shocked, asks what mistake she made that caused her uncle to chase her so relentlessly. Sohwa reveals that her uncle discovered her ability. By touching an object, she can learn information about its owner. Jin is astonished and struggles to believe what she's saying, asking her how true this is. Sohwa reassures him that she knows it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. She shares that her father knew about her ability and instructed her never to tell anyone. However, she admits that 4 years ago, when she was younger, she accidentally told her uncle about it. Sohwa recounts how her uncle, upon learning of her ability, forcibly took her from their home. He brought her to a strange place in a large house she didn't recognize. There, he intended to leave her with a frightening and mysterious man. She continues, revealing that when her father, Ayoha, found out, he took her and fled, eventually leaving her with the old servant Nusa to protect her. While escaping with Nusa, she came across a peculiar object. When she touched it, she discovered it belonged to Jin himself. Sohwa concludes her story, saying that's how she ended up here. Jin, puzzled, asks if she means that her father, Jiang, was in Qinghai specifically to meet him and bring Sowa to him. Jin stands, lost in thought, finding the story hard to believe but considering that if what the young girl says is true, he recalls the term, dark soul. Turning to Sowa, Jin asks her another question, mentioning that her father spoke about knowing the dark soul before his death. Jin tells her that the dark soul was a secret known only to him, and that he never spoke of it with her father, yet her father somehow knew. He asks if she discovered this secret when she touched his object and shared it with her father. He then requests that she retrieve the object and show it to him immediately. Sowa hesitates, saying there's something she needs to confirm first. Jin asks her what it is she wants to verify. Sowa questions whether Jin truly intends to fulfill her father's dying request. Jin is taken aback by her words and considers her a cunning girl. He responds that if she has seen his memories and understood his nature when she touched the object, then she must know who he truly is. He adds that he could easily take anything from a little girl like her as easily as breathing, and asks if she still wants to test him. Sowa begins crying, admitting she knows how frightening he is, but she bursts into tears, continuing that she also knows he's not the type to harm a little girl like her. Initially angered by her words and tears, Jin eventually feels joy and tells her that her statement is quite beautiful. He gently asks her again if her ability is real, whether she can reveal the truth about the dark soul. Sowa responds that she cannot do so at the moment because of her weakness. It requires a great deal of strength. However, she promises him that she will be able to do so once she regains her health. Jin feels reassured, and, in return, promises her that he will fulfill her father's request. In that moment, Jin reflects internally, realizing this is the true reason he sought out Sowa in the first place. He understands why everyone around him was puzzled by his quest to fulfill the dying wish of a little girl's father, something uncharacteristic for someone like him. But he saved Sowa not out of loyalty or desire to honor Jiang's request, but in the hope that her ability was real. He tells Sowa that if it turns out this was all a lie, she shouldn't expect him to let it slide just because she's a child. He looks at her and warns that in such a case, she would have to face the consequences of lying to him. Sowa, frightened by his words and intense gaze, begins to cry. At that moment, Jin questions himself, wondering how he could threaten a child like this. He realizes that he can't even call himself mature or rational when speaking to a little girl this way. He regrets that he doesn't know any other way to handle things, having grown up and lived this way all his life. Yet, even so, Sowa bursts into tears, crying that she has no one else but him, and that he's the only person she trusts. Jin is moved by her words and reflects that perhaps he's not the ruthless mercenary he once was. He kneels before her, promising that if she keeps her word, he will protect her with his life. Seeing her tears, he considers that maybe he too is capable of change. Sowa thanks him profusely and hands him the object she had touched to read his memories, a uniquely designed sphere. As Jin takes the sphere, he asks her where she found it, emphasizing that it's not something one can stumble upon just anywhere. Sowa explains that she found it with a street vendor selling old items. Jin tells her that if she could truly read his memories through the sphere, she must know who gave it to him. Sohwa confirms that she saw the person who gave him the sphere, a very beautiful woman. Jin acknowledges this as further proof of her ability's authenticity. He then muses that Luoyang is a strange place indeed, remarking that he never expected memories of an old friend to resurface in such a way here. Afterward, Jin leaves Sohwa's room and finds Nan sitting outside. She asks if he spoke kindly to the little girl. Jin replies that he got all the information he needed, and Nan remarks that's good, but she also warns him, asking if he was harsh with the child. Jin changes the subject, saying there's something else important he wants to ask her. Nan is surprised by his sudden inquiry. He asks about the name, Young, then corrects himself, saying he means Danri Young. He follows up by asking if Danri still lives with the same family as before, the Sima Changston family.